The woman behind the counter's morning sun crept through the foggy windows of a small diner on the edge of Atlanta. The streets outside were still wet from last night's rain, and a chill hung in the air like a memory that refused to fade. Inside the diner, the smell of old coffee, fried eggs, and worn-out dreams clung to the booths and faded red stools. The radio buzzed softly in the background, an old soul song playing that barely anyone noticed anymore. Sheila stood behind the counter, her hands moving almost automatically as she wiped the same coffee cup 3 times. Her apron was frayed at the bottom, and her sneakers had holes in places that no longer surprised her. She was 34, a mother of 2, and had been working at the same diner for over 9 years. Her life had become a rhythm she didn't question wake before dawn. Get the kids ready for school, bus to the diner, serve coffee with a tired smile. Bus, home, sleep, repeat, dot. But today, something felt different. Maybe it was the silence between the usual clangs of plates. Maybe it was the strange stillness in her chest. Or maybe it was just exhaustion building to a quiet storm. She didn't know. All she knew was that she felt like she was floating through the morning. Like her body was here, but her mind had drifted far away back to the days when she dreamed of being an artist. Back to the laughter of her mother before she passed. Back to who she used to be before life asked too much of her. The bell above the door jingled. A man stepped inside. He looked out of place, not because of his clothes, which were simple, just jeans and a navy pullover, but because of something in the way. He moved, quiet, purposeful, like someone who didn't need to prove anything. Sheila looked up, instinctively smiling the way she always did for new customers. Table or counter? She asked, her voice steady, but tired. He paused for a second and said, "Counter's fine." He took a seat 3 stools from the register, opened a small notebook, and pulled out a pen. He didn't look up when she poured him coffee. He simply nodded once, whispered a soft thank you, and began writing. There was something peaceful about him, but it wasn't the kind that made her relax. It was the kind that made her curious. There was no phone in his hand, no rush in his eyes. Only presence dot over the next hour. The diner filled slowly. The regulars came in old Mr. Thompson, who always forgot he already had coffee, a group of construction workers on their way to a site, and a teenage couple who always ordered 1 milkshake with 2 straws. The man at the counter didn't leave. He ordered eggs and toast, but barely touched them. Instead, he watched, listened, and wrote dot. It wasn't until Sheila brought over the check and placed it gently on the counter that he looked up at her for. Real. His eyes were kind, but they held something else to recognition, maybe. Like he had been waiting for this moment longer than she had. "Thank you for the coffee," he said. His voice was calm, but deep in a way that echoed. "It reminded me of something from back home." She smiled again, automatically. "India?" He blinked. Surprised, but amused. "Yes. How'd you know?" "The accent," she said, "and the way you write in that notebook. Like you're remembering something worth saving." He nodded slowly, tapping the pen against the edge. "Do you believe people meet for a reason?" She chuckled, not unkindly. "I used to. And now?" "Now I believe people meet because they happen to be in the same place. And then they forget each other." He studied her for a moment longer. Then he stood, pulled a small piece of paper from his pocket, and slid it across the counter without a word. Sheila picked it up, confused. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't even a receipt. It was a note. She unfolded it, slowly. Her hands shook just a little. The writing was neat, small, and careful. It said, "You see strangers every day and serve them like they matter. That kind of kindness changes the world, even if no one says it out loud. I see it. I saw you. This diner is lucky to have you, but the world needs more of you. Keep going." She read it twice before the words truly hit. Something deep inside her chest cracked open, like a window finally letting in light after years of dust. She looked up, heart racing, but the man was already at the door. She called out, "Wait, what's your name?" He paused, hand on the handle, and turned slightly over his shoulder. "Sundar," he said, with a soft smile. "Sundar Pichai." Then he was gone. Sheila stood frozen behind the counter, the note still in her hand, her breath caught somewhere between. A sob and a laugh. The rain had started again outside. But inside, something had shifted. She didn't know why he came. She didn't know what he saw in her. But in that moment, she felt seen for the first time in years. And she didn't know it yet. But this was only the beginning. Asterisk, the folded message of Sheila, stared at the second folded note like it was something alive. Her fingers hovered over it, hesitant, almost afraid. It wasn't the kind of fear that made your body tremble. It was the kind that crept in slowly. The kind that whispered, this might change something you're not ready to change. She looked around the diner, suddenly unsure if anyone else had seen it. But no one was paying attention. Everyone was busy sipping coffee, arguing about sports, scrolling on their phones. The world, as always, kept spinning. But for Sheila, time had stopped. The paper felt warm from the plate that had rested on top of it. It was small and square, folded so precisely that she could tell it had been done with care. The words "open later" were written in the same careful handwriting as the first note, but this time they felt heavier, more personal. A message left just for her, hidden, like it'd been meant to find her only when she was ready. She tucked the note into her apron pocket next to the tips she hadn't counted yet. For the rest of her shift, she moved like she was dreaming. Everything felt slower. The coffee pot seemed to hiss louder. The rain tapping against the windows felt like tiny hands knocking on her thoughts. She tried to focus, refilling cups, ringing up orders, laughing at old Mr. Thompson's usual bad joke, but she kept thinking about Sundar. Who was he, really? How did he know her name when she never gave it? Why did he leave her 2 notes in the space of an hour? One open, one sealed in mystery? By the time her shift ended and the diner emptied, her body ached. She changed into her coat in the back room, wrapped her scarf twice around her neck, and stepped out into the cold air. It smelled like wet pavement and car exhaust, but also like something else, something clean, like new beginnings. She walked past the corner where the bus usually came, but tonight she didn't wait for it. Instead, she walked. She needed the air, the quiet, the distance. Her apartment was small 2 bedrooms with thin walls, flickering lights, and a heater that coughed more than it warmed. But it was home. Her 2 kids were still at school, staying late for tutoring. She had a few precious hours to herself. She sat at the kitchen table, the second note still untouched in her hands. She took a deep breath and opened it. Inside were only 5 lines, short, simple. But the moment she read them, her heart thudded like it had skipped a beat. You spent so long surviving that you forgot you're allowed to dream. Open this envelope tomorrow morning. It's already yours. But it only works if you believe you're ready. Start with the box under your sink. Sheila blinked. Once. Twice. Reread the lines over and over. What envelope? What box? Was this a mistake? Some kind of prank? Or had he seen something she didn't even remember leaving in that dusty cabinet beneath the sink? She got up slowly, her limbs heavy with gout, and knelt in front of the sink. The door creaked as she opened it. Inside were the usual things: cleaning supplies, sponges, a bag of extra plastic grocery bags, and 1 old shoebox, taped shut, covered in dust. She stared at it, heart hammering in her chest. She didn't remember putting it there, but as she pulled it out, her hands knew it too well. She sat back on the floor. The box and her laptop memories hit her like a storm. This was the box she had sealed 10 years ago, the year after her mother died. The year her husband left, the year she was evicted from their first home. It had been her escape box. Inside were pages of old sketches, college acceptance letters she never used, a faded brochure from an art school in New York, and 1 small notebook filled with dreams she no longer dared to chase. She opened the box. Asterisk, the air inside smelled like time. Old paper, forgotten hope. Her eyes burned as she lifted each item. The drawings were still there, simple pencil sketches of faces, flowers, city streets, eyes staring back at her from a time when she still believed in herself. And at the bottom, Of the box was a white envelope, new, clean, sealed, not hers, her hands. Shook. This wasn't something she had left behind. This was something new. She tore it open carefully. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper. Folded once. It was a job offer. Her name was typed at the top. And beneath it, words that made no sense. We'd like to invite you to join a special 6-week mentorship in user design with a full scholarship and a remote stipend beginning Monday. You were recommended personally. Full details are enclosed. Asterisk, she flipped the paper. No contact number. No signature. Just a date and a website link written by hand. Her breath caught in her throat. Was this real? She picked up her phone and typed. In the link, the site looked official, clean, elegant, full of technology words she didn't understand. But right there on the screen was her name again, her full name, in bold letters. Invited. Asterisk. She sat on the floor for a long time, staring at the screen. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The city lights flickered, but inside something had woken up. Still, one question echoed in her head louder than the rest. How did Sundar Pichai know about the box? Something at the door phone in Sheila's hand felt heavier than it should have, like those 5 words had added a weight that pressed down into her bones. Check your front door. Now. She read it again, slower this time, as if the meaning might change. It didn't. The message had no number, no name, just the command. Something about it felt impossible, but not threatening. Strange, yes. Surreal, but also gentle, like the voice of someone who had been watching from a distance, not with judgment, but with care. She stood slowly, the phone still in her hand, her legs weak. She moved through the apartment with quiet steps, half expecting the floor to creak louder than usual, as if the walls themselves could sense something extraordinary was happening. Outside, the street was still lit only by the flickering yellow glow of a single street lamp. A cat darted across the sidewalk. Somewhere, a car engine hummed low, then faded. Sheila hesitated at the door. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached for the lock. Her fingers were trembling now. Part of her brain told her this was ridiculous, that maybe someone had just dropped off a package or a flyer. Maybe the message wasn't even real. But another part, deeper, quieter, but far more certain, told her that whatever waited on the other side of the door was meant for her. She turned the knob. At first, she saw nothing. The hallway was empty, silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the low hum of a distant elevator. Then her eyes dropped to the floor. There it was. A box. Medium sized, wrapped in plain brown paper. No writing on it, no postage, no tape. Just string. Tied in a neat bow at the top. It looked like something out of a different time, like a gift from an era when people still believed in paper and ribbon instead of email and BARCODS. Sheila bent down slowly and picked it up. It was lighter than she expected. She closed the door behind her and sat on the couch, setting the box on the coffee table like it might vanish if she looked away. For a long moment, she just stared at it, unsure whether to laugh or cry. All she knew was that her life had gone from predictable to something she couldn't explain in less than 12 hours. Then, gently, she untied the string. The top folded open with a soft sigh, like the box itself had been holding its breath. Inside was a leather-bound notebook. Dark brown, smooth, worn at the edges like it had been used, loved, trusted. Beneath it was a silver pen, tucked carefully in a velvet ribbon. And under the pen, a small black envelope. Her heart thud. She took the envelope first. Inside, a note. This notebook is not for your schedule. This is not for lists or errands or reminders of things you owe others. This is for you, your thoughts, your voice, your design. Fill it with your ideas over the next 6 weeks. At the end, bring it to Mountain View. Someone will be waiting. No signature. No name, but Sheila didn't need one. Her fingers touched the leather of the notebook, and something inside her cracked open again. It was as if the universe was peeling back layer after layer of the armor she had built around herself just to survive. She hadn't held a notebook like this since she was a teenager, back when her world was still made of colors and sketches and dreams that didn't ask for. Permission. She flipped it open. On the first page. In small, careful handwriting were 4 words. You already belong here. A breath escaped her lips. Shaky and quiet. But then the silence broke. A soft knock on the door. Sheila froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. The box had already been delivered. The message had already been sent, so who else could it be? She stood up slowly, every movement cautious, alert. Her hand hovered over the doorknob again. This time, there was no message, no warning. Just a knock, and then nothing. She opened the door. Standing there was a woman, maybe late 40s, maybe early 50s, dressed in a long coat with a scarf wrapped around her neck. She looked tired, like someone who had traveled a long way without rest. But her eyes were bright, intense, alive. They studied Sheila with a familiarity that made her breath catch. You don't know me, the woman said quietly, but I knew your mother. The words hit like a wave. Sheila staggered back a step, one hand gripping the edge of the doorframe. What did you say? Your mother, Gloria. She was my mentor when I first started working in nonprofit design back in Chicago. We lost touch after she got sick, but she used to talk about you. A lot. Sheila's voice came out broken. That was almost 15 years ago? The woman nodded, stepping inside as if the moment itself had given her permission. I know. But her work stayed with me. So did her words. She believed in using design to change lives. She said that if you raised a child in truth and creativity, they'd carry that light with them, even when the world tried to put it out. Sheila could barely breathe. Why are you here? The woman smiled softly. Because someone told me you were ready, and I think your mother would agree. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a key. There's a co-working space 2 blocks from here. Quiet, safe, full of other women rebuilding their creative lives. I run it. This is your key. No cost. Just commitment. She placed the key in Sheila's hand, then turned to leave. Wait, Sheila called out, her voice cracking. What's your name? The woman looked back with a smile that almost seemed too knowing. Mina. And then she was gone. Asterisk the message in the inbox, the subject line sat there like a whisper in the dark, almost too soft to believe. One more note from Sundar. It didn't glow or flash. It didn't demand her attention. It just waited, patient, quiet, like it knew she would open it when she was ready. Sheila's hand hovered over the trackpad. Her heart beat like a slow drum. All around her, the apartment was still. The kids were asleep in the next room. The TV was off. The light above the sink buzzed gently, like it always did. The box from earlier still sat on the coffee table. The notebook now resting in her lap, half full with pencil marks and half-forgotten dreams she'd started to remember again. And now, this email. This message had somehow made her feel seen again, in a way that frightened and comforted her all at once. She clicked. The email opened. There was no greeting, no long explanation. Just a note, written the same way the others had been. Simple, quiet, and yet somehow deeper than anything else she'd read all year. You're standing at the edge of the version of yourself you almost forgot existed. Most people don't get this far. Most people walk away because comfort is louder than courage. But you didn't walk away. You walked forward. That's why I sent Mina. That's why the door is open. Now it's time to ask the hardest question. Are you willing to let go of the person you were in order to become the person you were meant to be? She read the words once, then again. Her eyes burned. Her hands tightened around the notebook in her lap. It was too much, too exact. Like someone had crawled into her soul and spoken to the part of her she tried to bury under responsibility. An exhaustion and quiet grief. She had never asked for this. Never even dreamed of it anymore. But now, it was here. All of it. And it was asking her to choose. She sat back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. Her mother's face flashed through her mind's soft smile, paint-stained hands, eyes full of fierce love. She remembered those nights as a child, curled up in her mother's lap while Gloria whispered stories about changing the world with color, with words, with ideas that refused to be small. And she remembered the way her mother had looked at her, even during the hardest times, as if she saw a future in her that Sheila couldn't yet imagine. But that future had been locked away. The moment life became about survival. The moment she had 2 mouths to feed and bills that never waited, she hadn't drawn in 10 years. Hadn't sketched a single design. Hadn't even opened the drawer with her old pencils, because what was the point when rent was due in time? Was short? Until now, asterisk now, Sundar's words were sitting in her inbox like an invitation. She hadn't dared to write for herself. She looked back at the screen. There was a link at the bottom of the email. It said, "Click here to accept the final step. Just that." No more. Her fingers trembled as she moved the cursor toward the link. Something inside her screamed, "Wait. Not yet. This could be a scam. This could be a setup. This could be a mistake." But something deeper, calmer, wiser whispered, "Go. Trust it." Leap. She clicked. The screen turned white for a few seconds. Then a new page appeared. It was a video. No title. No timer. Just the play button in the center of the screen. She clicked it. Asterisk, the screen faded into focus. The first thing she saw was a long hallway, white walls, glass windows, light pouring in from high ceilings. The camera moved slowly, like someone walking. And then a voice spoke. You don't know what you're capable of until someone shows you how deeply they believe in you. It was Sundar's voice, but not an interview. Not a speech. This was personal, spoken directly into the camera. Like, he wasn't speaking to the world, but only to her. He appeared on screen at the end of the hallway, sitting on a bench, wearing the same navy pullover from the diner. No stage, no crowd, just him. Asterisk. "I didn't walk into that diner by chance," he said. "I was looking for something, or maybe someone, I didn't know who. But when I saw the way you treated people, how you listened, how you moved with grace, even while carrying the weight of exhaustion, it reminded me of my mother. She was a teacher, quiet, kind. She taught students who had almost nothing, but she gave everything." He looked away for a moment, then back into the camera. "We build things at Google. Software, devices, systems, but we forget sometimes that the strongest systems are human ones. Kindness, creativity, humility, resilience. These are not soft skills. They are survival skills, and they are leadership skills, and you have them. I saw it in your eyes. I saw it in how you lifted others, without even trying." The camera cut to a slow pan of a design studio, bright sketches, wireframes, rough drafts pinned to walls, people in quiet discussion. "I want you to join us," he said. "Not because you have the perfect resume, but because you have the soul of a builder. And we need builders who haven't forgotten how to feel." The video faded to black. A final message appeared. "You have 5 days to prepare. Your flight leaves Monday morning. You won't be alone." Sheila stared at the screen, her breath shallow, her chest tight. This couldn't be real. But it was her name, her invitation, her life, rewritten. And yet, beneath all that wonder, a new fear began to grow. How would she explain this to her children, to her job, to herself? Asterisk, what we carried the next morning. The apartment was still filled with a soft hush. Not silence, life made too much noise for that, but a gentler quiet, like the air was waiting for something to begin. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the light that slipped through the curtains painted long shadows across the floor. The city outside moved in slow motion. Traffic lights changed for cars that hadn't yet arrived. Birds chirped softly from rooftops where no one looked up to hear them. Sheila sat at the kitchen table, the notebook in front of her, a half-full mug of coffee forgotten in her hand. She hadn't slept much. Her thoughts had been loud, crowded with questions that looped like restless wind. What if I fail? What if this isn't real? What if I go and everything falls apart? And beneath those, the bigger ones, what if I go and I never come back the same? The kids were still asleep in the next room. Jaden, her oldest, was 12, quiet but watchful, always noticing more than he said. Maya, her youngest, had just turned 8, still clinging to magic and stories and bedtime hugs. Sheila had always protected them from the weight of her world. They saw the long hours, the tired eyes, the days she skipped dinner just to save. More groceries for them, but they had never heard her cry. Never seen her break. She made sure of that, always but now something had changed. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about transformation, about becoming. And she couldn't do it in secret? Not anymore. She walked to their room and knocked gently before opening the door. Both of them stirred, blinking in the dim light, their hair messy from dreams, and warm blankets. Morning? She said softly. Maya rubbed her eyes. Is it Saturday? No, Sheila said, smiling a little. But I need to talk to you both. Can you come sit at the table? They shuffled out slowly, still sleepy, still small. Jaden climbed onto his usual chair without a word. Maya dragged her blanket with her and curled up on the bench. Sheila sat down across from them, heart pounding. Something happened, she began. Something really big. They looked at her. Not confused, not scared, just listening. Like they somehow already knew this wasn't just any morning. You know how I work at the diner, she continued, and how I've always tried to take care of everything. The house, the food, the bills. They both nodded. Well, a man came into the diner 2 days ago. He was kind, thoughtful, and he saw something in me that I forgot was even there. She paused. She looked down at the notebook, then back at them. He offered me a chance to go somewhere, to learn something new. To be a part of something bigger than the diner. Something I've wanted for a long time, even if I stopped saying it. Out loud. Maya tilted her head. Like school? Kind of, Sheila said, smiling. But not just any school. A design mentorship. And maybe even a job. The kind of job where people make things that change lives. Jaden spoke for the first time, his voice calm and clear. Is it real? Sheila nodded slowly. I think it is. I didn't believe it at first. But everything keeps pointing to yes. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, Are we coming with you? That question cracked something inside her. She reached across the table and took his hand. Not yet. Not at first. I'd go for 6 weeks. It's a test program. They're covering everything. And Mina, the woman who knew Grandma, she's helping. She checked on you, and Aunt Clara said she can come by after school. I wouldn't leave without making sure you were safe. Maya looked up, her voice small. But why do you have to go? Sheila leaned forward. Because sometimes the world gives you a door, and if you don't walk through it, you spend your whole life wondering what was on the other side. I want to show you both what's possible when you don't give up. When you believe in your own story. I want you to see your mom doing something brave, even if it's scary. Maya nodded slowly, then got up from her seat and walked to her mother's side. She wrapped her arms around Sheila's waist and whispered, I think Grandma would be proud. Tears slid down Sheila's cheeks, silent and grateful. She reached out and pulled Jaden into the hug, too. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them wrapped in something bigger than words. Not goodbye, not even change. Just truth. Later that afternoon, Sheila began to pack. It wasn't much, just a small bag. 3 outfits, her sketching pencils, the leather-bound notebook, and a photo of her mother holding her as a baby. She looked at it for a long time before slipping it into the front pocket of her bag. Just as she was zipping it closed. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, it wasn't from me and a dot. The sender was a name she hadn't seen before. Caleb. S. The message said, I'm the one who built the mentorship program. Sundar gave me one name, yours. We've never done this before. But this story is bigger than code or design. It's about reminding the world why people like you matter most. I'll meet you at the airport gate. Look for the man with a silver pin shaped like a compass. And remember, we don't need you to be perfect. We just need you to be ready. Asterisk. Other side of the door of the airport smelled like too many stories happening at once. Rolling luggage, fresh coffee, quiet tears, last-minute goodbyes. People rushed by without looking at each other, heads down, earbuds in, eyes on screens. But Sheila stood still. In the middle of it all, she felt like a stone in a river, letting the current move around her while she stayed rooted to one spot. Her fingers gripped the strap of her bag. The leather notebook pressed tightly against her chest. She scanned the terminal until her eyes found him, a tall man in a gray coat. Waiting by gate 31B, his hands folded calmly in front of him. On his lapel, just like the message had said, was a small silver pin shaped like a compass. Looked up at her and smiled gently. Not a wide smile. Not one meant for a photo. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they already know who you are before. You say a word. She walked toward him slowly. When she reached him, he spoke first. "You made it," he said. Sheila nodded, her throat too tight for words. "I'm Caleb," he said. "And before you ask, yes, this is real. And no, you're not here by accident. You built this program?" She finally asked, her voice quiet but steady. "I did," he said, "but not alone. It started as an idea between a few of us people in tech who had everything success could buy, but kept feeling like something was missing. And then Sundar met you. That changed everything. But why me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small black tablet. He tapped it once, then turned the screen to her. A video began to play. She recognized it instantly, thought it was from the diner security feed. Low resolution. Muted, but unmistakable. There she was, pouring coffee, wiping counters, talking to customers. And there was Sundar watching, writing, smiling. And then, sliding? The first note across the counter. The screen faded to black. "We didn't choose you because you had the most experience," Caleb said. "We chose you because you reminded us why we started building in the first place. People like you are the reason technology exists, to solve real problems, to lift lives. We've spent too many years designing for screens. It's time to start designing for souls." Sheila felt something deep inside her start to shift. Not a sudden jolt, not fireworks, just quiet recognition. Like she was finally being called by her real name. Asterisk Caleb led her through the terminal, past the usual gates and food courts, toward a smaller, quieter lounge she didn't even know existed. When they entered, the air changed. It was calmer, softer, filled with natural light and open space. There were others waiting there. Not many. Just a small group of people seated in a circle, each one holding their own notebook. One was an older man with weathered hands and bright, curious eyes. Another was a young woman wearing a hijab, sketching something on her page. There was a teacher, a nurse, a former mechanic. None of them looked like designers, and yet each of them glowed with something familiar. KLEB turned to her.